First up, Gloria is going to talk about terminology. I think it always helps to review definitions so that we start on the same sheet of music. Gloria.
Thanks, Kathy. So I wanted to start today with a quick discussion of terminology to make sure everyone is using the same definitions as we move through the presentation. First, the Council on Environmental Quality, or CEQ, defines mitigation in 5 hierarchical levels, including avoiding, minimizing, or rectifying impacts, reducing or eliminating impacts over time, or compensating for impacts through replacement or substitution. Just to reemphasize, these mitigation levels are listed in priority order for how they should be considered. Next, I wanted to clarify the difference between mitigation and design features. Design features are specific measures that are included as part of the proposed action or alternatives. They can be added at any point in the process to minimize impacts as long as the applicant, if it's not the BLM, agrees to include them. Design features are encouraged since they can lead to a simpler impact analysis by incorporating important protection measures up front. The BLM may also impose additional mitigation requirements to address impacts that result from the proposed action or alternatives. This would be considered a reactive response to identified impacts, rather than proactively preventing them. Next, we have on-site mitigation, which occurs at the location of impacts. For example, a proponent might paint artificial structures at the site to reduce impacts to visual resources. Off-site mitigation occurs outside of the area of impact. For example, a proponent might provide off-site water development for wild horses and wildlife in exchange for fencing an existing spring. In-kind mitigation includes the replacement or substitution of resources that are of the same type and kind as those impacted. An example might be off-site habitat improvements for sage-grouse nesting and brood-rearing habitat in exchange for disturbance of existing nesting and brood-rearing habitat. By comparison, out-of-kind mitigation focuses on resources that are not the same type and kind as those impacted. An example would be off-site habitat improvements in sage-grouse winter habitat in exchange for loss of nesting and brood-rearing habitat. Our next term is durability. Durability means the time frame within which the mitigation is effective. It is important to ensure that it coincides with the length of time the action will be impacting the resource, plus the time it takes the resource to recover, if necessary. And finally, the new Regional Mitigation Manual talks about 4 main types of mitigation. Restoration involves the reestablishment or rehabilitation of resources or values, which might include reclamation of a site once it is no longer needed. Creation includes the development of a resource or value through manipulation, which could involve the development of a recreation site in exchange for loss of recreational values. Enhancement is the heightening, intensification, or improvement of one or more resources or values. This could include spring or other habitat improvements in exchange for disturbance. And preservation is the permanent or long-term protection of important resources or values. A common example would be constructing exclosure fencing around a functioning spring that provides important habitat for a threatened or endangered species.
Now, Gloria, one of the terms that you mentioned that causes some confusion is durability. Can you give us an example?
Sure, Kathy. An important aspect of durability is ensuring that the mitigation remains in effect for as long or longer than the resource is impacted. A great way to ensure this longevity is to focus mitigation within areas with special designations that will preserve those investments long-term, such as in areas of critical environmental concern or other protected areas.
Okay, so that was the terminology, and some of the terms that you mentioned are pretty common, like avoid, minimize, rectify, reduce, eliminate, compensate. I think people have heard those as well as design features, but some of the other ones like that may not be quite as familiar. On-site, off-site, in-kind, out-of-kind, durability, restoration, creation, enhancement, preservation. So that's just another good reason that people should be looking at the manual.
Absolutely.
And thanks for going over those for us.